standing here with Scott from Waterway, and you know, one of the things that I talk about, and I've always talked about, is this whole oversizing pumps and undersizing plumbing, and it's been an issue from day one. I know 25 years ago, you and I was just talking a few minutes about the standard 1632 with a 1 horsepower super pump. In our competitive market, same thing, poly pipe, all of that, we'd have these guys selling on the size of the pump. So, you know, or size of the pump. So then you're competing against someone with a 2 horsepower pump and you've got a 1 horse. Same size plumbing, well, we know what that means. You're only going to get so much water through it. So Scott and I are discussing that. We're talking about what's happened, what's changed, and all of these efficiencies that are happening in these regulations that are requiring us to finally catch up. First being the variable speed pumps or the multi-speed pumps for efficiency, but he just was, and I'll let you fill that in terms of, in California, now we're looking at the installation part to make it efficient. Love to hear that, because we're finally going to get to the point where the pipe matches what the pump can do, instead of, you know, way oversizing a pump and way undersizing plumbing. So share a little bit of that.
Well, what's happened out there is you had Title 20, which was the law that sat there and had energy efficiency for appliances, but it only works as well. The appliance only works as well if it's installed properly. So the second part of that, about a couple of years later, was Title 24, which is a law that sits there and puts into the energy efficiency of how it's installed. So at least on the pool side of it, the most notable things that we've seen come out of that is, one, now they're specifying plumbing sizing as far as larger plumbing, depending on flow rates and turnover rates. You've got like long sweep 90s that are required because there's better hydraulics, allows for better energy efficiency. The larger valves and fittings, now you see where we were the first ones that came out with 2.5-inch plumbing on the majority of our equipment, going clear back to 1998. Now we see some of our competitors also adding larger equipment because it's now being required under law in that, for instance. But the thing is it shouldn't just be mandated in California, because of the fact that as the popularity of especially variable speed pumps occur, we can get better efficiencies with larger plumbing everywhere. We're seeing markets here in Toronto, in the Midwest where I'm at, a lot of the metropolitan areas, where you have the builders putting a lot of extra things on a pool, water features, spillovers, waterfalls, you name it, spas, floor systems.
All the bubblers, all the extra things.
So all of these things then add more of a requirement as far as extra flow rate, but there's only so much that you can actually shove through a pump, filter, and a heater, okay? And so those are the types of things that then will cause restrictions, which then means the system's less efficient, not just in filtration quality, efficiency of the pump, but now it also translates into energy efficiency. And to the homeowner, what's that costing them out of their pocket to the utility companies? So that's where the bottom line is.
I want to jump in and make an interesting distinction. I know you just mentioned a few minutes ago that now there's some competitors out there. I've used Waterway Sweep 90s for a long, long time, and I had to special order all of them. They weren't available in the standard market because most people didn't understand basic hydraulics, didn't know the difference between a street 90 and a sweep 90, and yet, what a big difference. Basically, if you turn water at a hard 90, it hits the wall before it turns, and there's a lot of restriction there. When you sweep it, it's a long arched curve, which allows the water to not create so much turbulence and not have that hard hit on a wall before it turns. And what happens is you greatly reduce the restriction of the friction in that pipe.
Basically, with a long sweep 90, because you're allowing that water flow to more easily turn than hard, fast left or right, you're cutting down on restriction, which then also cuts down on head pressure, which in the long run results in more efficiency, which can also translate in energy efficiency. So for instance, if you take our 2-inch long street 90, if you take that sweep 90 and compare it to a standard 90, a standard 90 is at about 8.5 feet of head, where a 45 is at 3.2. I'm sorry, our long sweep 90 is at 3.2, and a 45 is at 2.5. So when I was plumbing up, I'd use two 45s which is still about 5 feet of head, but also now the problem is you have extra time, extra labor, you got to sit there and cut pipe, mate everything up, try to make sure it stays flat. So it's a little bit more work intensive, but now I could reduce the head pressure down from the standard 90. With a long sweep 90, it simplifies my labor, but now the head pressure on that is basically about 2 to 3 times less than that standard fitting. So even though the cost may be about another 30–40% more, I now can sit there and get better efficiencies through my plumbing. On my own pool, just to kind of give you a real quick breakdown. Years ago when I was building, I did everything in 2-inch, did in-floor systems. My average pool, typically without the floor system running, would run at around 35 feet of head with the pump on full. When I did my new pool at my house about 10 years ago, did everything in 2.5, but now 2.5 inch above ground, and with all long sweep 90s. I got 1,800 feet of pipe on that pool and about 170 long sweep 90s in there. But that system, with the floor system running, brand new clean in the spring, usually runs at about 18 PSI.
So half.
Easily half. So that translates
much more water flow, and yet
more elaborate, but
way more efficient.
And that just translates in the fact that now it's also more energy efficient.
Absolutely.
Okay.